The group stage of the tournament is finally over, and we're now gonna move on to the playoffs with the top 16 players competing in 1v1s. The final round of the group stage was timed Elite Dreadbloon on another brick with a spike and sub banned and a paragon limit of 1. And just like the last timed round, we are only going to play the first 3 tiers, and up to 5 seconds of penalty is allowed to be subtracted. In 16th place overall and 4th in their group, we have Mayo with a time of 1 minute 19 seconds. For tier 1, he's got a Master Bomber to take out the first skull with primary immunity, and once that skull is done, he sells the ninja and upgrades one of his darts to Plasma Monkey Fan Club and uses the ability, and then upgrades an Ice Monkey to Super Brittle and takes out the remaining 3 skulls. For tier 2, he's going for a Mad Plasma Monkey Fan Club combo along with Homeland, Overclock and some debuffs. Overall, looks nice other than that he forgot about Embrittlement, since that does stack with the Esprit and he did have the cash for it. For tier 3, he's got a degree 21 Wizard Paragon using the Morph ability to take down the first 2 skulls, and when he gets to the magic immunity, he sells the Wizard Paragon and buys the Ace Paragon instead, and then micros it to take down the last 2 skulls. Nice job, Mayo, on 1 minute 19 seconds. Next up we have Express in 15th place overall and 3rd in his group with a time of 1 minute 6 seconds, cutting 13 seconds off of the last submission. For tier 1 he will also be going for a Master Bomber to take down the first skull, but after selling that tower he switches to a Tax Zone plus Esprit setup, and he also has the money for a tier 3 village and some alks. This was actually like 10 seconds slower than Mayo, so Express is gonna be saving a lot of time on the next 2 tiers. On tier 2, he has a similar setup to Mayo, except he has got a support temple, an alk for the mad, and has added a tax zone, so it looks like he had some better farming to afford this, and he also remembered that Homeland can now be used in between rounds, so he used the ability and then sold the village to use the money for even more defense. Looks like he also forgot about adding the tier 4 Embrittlement, but still very nice tier 2. Now moving on to the 3rd and final tier, here he's got a Wizard Paragon, a Mad and a Megalodon, and he's also got every tier 5 Dart Monkey, so once his Wizard has taken down the first 2 skulls, he will sell it and switch to the degree 59 Dart Paragon, which does a decent job with a wall right behind the boss for the balls to bounce off of. Just unfortunate that he didn't get the degree 60, but still nice job to Express. Next we have Pick-n-Shot in 10th place overall and 2nd in his group with a time of 52 seconds. For tier 1 he's got a similar setup to Express, but for the first skull he will use both the tier 5 and tier 4 Bomber Ninja. This way he can use one less sticky bomb from the tier 5 and sell it earlier so he can upgrade his tax zone etc. sooner and not have any downtime while buying upgrades. And instead of the Esprit, he's got the tier 4 Embrittlement plus a glue, and he also adds 2 tier 4 tags during the fight. And in contrast to the previous 2 contestants, he also remembered to use Ben's ability for another +1 damage on his tags. Nicely done, first tier. For tier 2, he's got basically an identical setup to Express. The only real difference is that he has added the tier 4 Embrittlement as well, and once again he remembers to use Ben's ability, all in all resulting in a faster tier 2. For tier 3, he's got the Wizard Paragon to degree 40 and will not be switching Paragons mid-fight. Instead, he will rely on a lot of other towers like the Plasma Monkey Fan Club, Tax Zone, Mad, Boats, etc. to take down the Magic Immunity Skull, and then let the Paragon tear through the other 3 using the ability. Well done, Pick-n-Shot on 10th place overall. In 9th place overall and 3rd in his group, we have Lendoli with a time of 50 seconds. For tier 1, he's got 3 tags and 2 Ice Monkeys prepped and will take out the first 2 skulls using the Bloon Solver Mermonkey combo, and after that he sells the Mermonkey and the glue and upgrades the 3 tags to tier 4 and then gets both the tier 4 and tier 5 Ice debuff and also remembers to use Ben's ability. This works very well and is the best tier 1 time we've seen so far. Very nice. For tier 2, he's got a similar setup to what we've seen before. He's also used Homeland and then sold it, and worth noting is that the temple is buffed by Desperado for the extra range to buff more towers. Clean tier 2, well thought out setup. For the third tier, he's also going to be using the Wizard Paragon as the main damage dealer and then a lot of other towers to help out with the magic immunity skull. The difference here is mainly that he has a lot more of these extra towers and he's also got them perma-brewed, so he's going to be able to take down that skull faster. Overall, very nice run, congrats to Lendoli on 10th place with 50 seconds. Next we have me in 7th place overall and 3rd in my group with a time of 45 seconds. This tier 1 is pretty darn clean. I used the glue mermonkey combo for the first 2 skulls and then switch over to a tax zone esprit combo and then add a tier 3 alch and a tier 2 alch for more AMD buffs and then use Ben's ability to give me a pretty good tier 1 time. Best we've seen so far. For tier 2, unlike the previous contestants, I don't have a support temple, but instead of that I have an overclocked Megalodon buffed by Desperado for the extra range so it can attack the boss, and I also have an overclock not just for the Mad but for the tax zone as well, and I also do a double Plasma Monkey fan club, although some of the darts didn't have enough range. For tier 3 I will also be using the Wizard Paragon, and as for my other towers for the magic immunity skull, it looks similar to Lendoli except I have less towers, but I do have a true Sun God buff instead of the temple buff. Overall, I'm pretty happy with my game. I only did the one run on the last day. There's a lot I would improve, but still I think it was pretty nice by my standards. Next we have Jandolf in 2nd place overall and 1st in his group with a time of 33 seconds. He IMF farmed for tier 1 and he also uses the glue mermonkey combo for the first 2 skulls, and then he moves into a tax zone, but unlike me he also afforded a tier 4 village, a tier 4 alch and uses both ice debuffs. So even though we use the same basic strat, his first tier was 7 seconds faster than mine. Crazy. For tier 2, he's got a temple, Plasma Monkey fan club, debuffs, mad, all the expected stuff, but he's also got the sentry champion, a lot of ninjas, and a perma-brew. These towers you would kind of expect to see on tier 3, but Jandolf's farming is way above what we've seen so far, so he can afford to take his setups a notch higher than everyone else. For the 3rd tier, he's got an NG Paragon, a VTSG, plus a lot of other towers. He literally filled the entire map. This is what I mean when I say his farming is way better than any player we've watched before. Pretty freaking amazing final setup. Watching this really makes me want to learn the new advanced farming strats for the mid game. Well done Jandolf on 2nd place. Now onto something freaking insane. Felicia in 1st place, beating Jandolf by over 4 seconds. Felicia IMF farmed for tier 1 to buy a Mad for the first skull and then transition over to a Plasma Monkey fan club for the other 3 skulls. We're gonna watch this twice because it's too fast. Both the Mad and the Dart ability are off cooldown. Use the Plasma Monkey fan club, sell the Plasma Monkey fan club, buy the Mad, use the ability, take down the first skull, sell it, buy the Esprit, and then use some leftover cash to buy a few final upgrades on the darts for more attack speed. Insane first tier. For tier 2, the setup looks similar to Jandolf, except Felicia has switched out the ninjas for tax instead and has had the time to perma-brew all of the towers unlike Jandolf. Super fast tier 2. And for the final tier we see a similar setup using the NG Paragon and VTSG plus a lot of other towers. Despite not having as many other towers as Jandolf, this tier is pretty much exactly as fast because they have the same main damage dealers and the rest of the towers can only contribute so much. The real time save on this run compared to 2nd place was on the 1st tier, which was one of the most beautiful tiers I've ever seen performed in the game. Huge congrats to Felicia on this amazing run. So that's the group stage done. Now let's take a look at what the final scores were like and who made it onto the playoffs. For group A we have Animal, Pick and Shot, Mayo and the Polish guy making it. In group B we have Mr. Pytrek, Lazy Lizard, me and Mr. $. In my group, as well as in group D, there were 2 players in the top 4 with the same score, so normally a tiebreaker would be played, but since there was no tiebreaker needed to decide who was gonna make it in, the tiebreaker would only affect who you would be facing in the first round of the playoffs. But we all decided that we would rather skip that and just let the players who were going to play the tiebreaker instead agree on who would be given the win and basically choose who they were going to face in the first round. I was gonna play a tiebreaker versus Mr. $, and decided that I would let him choose who he was gonna face in the first round. He had a choice between Lendoli or Jandolf, and not so surprisingly, he chose to play versus Lendoli, leaving me to play versus Jandolf in the first round. So, in other words, the next round will probably be my last. In Group C, Jandolf, Lendoli, Isab, and Sonaki moved on to the playoffs, and finally in Group D, Sarot, Daragon, Felicia, and Toast moved on to the playoffs. Now let's look at the final bracket. Here it is. For the remaining rounds, the only thing that matters is getting a better score than your opponent. If you win, you move on. If you lose, you're done. Now, I'm a gambling man, so let's make some predictions here. Most of the rounds are pretty easy to predict who's gonna win. There's a lot of rounds where a top player faces versus someone that isn't really on their level, so this shouldn't be too hard. The first round is gonna be least cash elite phase, and the rest of the rounds are currently unknown. Animal versus Toast, 100% Animal. Pick and Shot versus Daragon. Daragon has performed a lot better. Mayo versus Felicia should for sure be Felicia, but the only least cash round we've had before, they were pretty close, although I don't know how hard Felicia really tried. Polish Guy versus Sarot, easy Sarot. Pytrek versus Sonaki, easy Pytrek. Isab versus Lazy Lizard. This is actually a pretty fair matchup. Lazy Lizard seems to be a pretty good player, but the only least cash round we had, Isab did extremely well, and since this first round is least cash, I'm definitely gonna give it to Isab. Mr. $sign versus Lendoli. This is another fair matchup. They both seem to be pretty good players. They got some nice scores. In the least cash round, $sign did beat Lendoli. I am gonna pick $sign here, not because he did better than Lendoli in least cash, but because I didn't like Lendoli's solution in that round. I think if Lendoli went for a different solution other than the Ace Paragon in that round, I would have picked him here over $sign even if $sign beat him, so this is a close one. And the final matchup in the first round is gonna be myself versus Jandolf, and this should of course be an easy Jandolf. I'm gonna try my best of course, but it's gonna be an uphill battle to say the least. Now, we don't know any of the future rounds, but I'm gonna try to make a prediction anyway. Animal versus Daragon should of course be an easy Animal. Daragon has done very well and did in fact beat Animal in one of the two least tiers rounds, so I guess if this round is least tiers, there is a small chance for an upset, but the bet is of course gonna be Animal. Felicia versus Sarot. This one is gonna be interesting. I don't know who to pick here. Sarot is really good and his scores are very stable and reliable, except in this last round where he got a really bad score, but in the description of his submission he said that this was a quote 2-hour speedrun, so that explains that. Felicia, on the other hand, has their scores all over the place, probably due to varying motivation for the round, so this is a hard guess to make here. I think it depends a lot on the game mode. If it's timed, I think it's gonna be Felicia, but if it's least tiers, it's pretty even. I think that this round is gonna be least tiers and then timed for the last two rounds. That's my guess, so this is a very close one. Sarot is probably the safer option due to more stable scores. You never know if Felicia will say that they don't like the round, they just don't care anymore. So Felicia is kind of the degenerate option here. So that's who I'm picking. Pytrek versus Isab, easy Pytrek. Jandolf versus $sign, easy Jandolf. So then we're down to the semifinals. Animal versus Felicia, or possibly Sarot. Either way, this should be Animal's win. But remember that I do predict the last two rounds to be timed, and given the absolutely insane score we just saw from Felicia, there is definitely potential for an upset here. And then we have Pytrek versus Jandolf. This one is gonna be very exciting, two of the best players in the game. hard to make a guess here, but Pytrek said he doesn't have faith in me beating Jandolf, so I don't have faith in him either. Jandolf wins. So in that case, the final would be between Jandolf and Animal. Now, there is a small chance for upsets, as I mentioned before. From the top part of the bracket, you could see Felicia or Sarut make it all the way to the grand final, although less likely. From the bottom side of the bracket, of course, Pytrek beating Jandolf is super possible as well, since it's a close matchup. But with the picks I've made, it would be Animal versus Jandolf, and in a timed round, which I'm guessing it's gonna be for both the semifinals and the grand final, my bet would be that Jandolf takes the cake. So that's my picks for the playoffs. So in other words, I'm facing off against the player who I believe will win the whole thing in the very first round. Not a very good setup for me to make it very far, but that is what's to be expected. I never really had any chance of winning the whole thing, but I'm glad I made it into the playoffs, and it's gonna be fun to play versus Jandolf, and I'm gonna try my best. But always remember the story of David versus Goliath. Goliath died from a stone to the face, so you might want to keep your windows closed when playing Mr. Jandolf.